Just a moment. Okay. Okay, Prabhu, we can start.
Om Gana Timirandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svayamupakadamayam Dadati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Utaparakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Saganaragnatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitan Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Vedan Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitamscha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagat Pate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurange Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priya Vanchakalpate Yubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Patitanan Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasari Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Atidevi Charini Nirvishe Nirvadi Paschatya Desha Tarini Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. I will show the verses on the slides, on the screen. Let me share that. Just a moment.
Krishna, Krishna. Krishna.
Everybody is able to see the verses on the screen?
Yes, Prabhu.
I'm just adjusting it now. Just give me a moment. Okay, Prabhu.
Okay. Thank you for this opportunity to speak on and discuss Bhagavad Gita as it is. We're studying chapter 7 entitled Knowledge of the Absolute, texts 12 and 13. So text 12. Ye chaiva sattvika bhava.
Ye chaiva sattvika bhava.
Rajasas tamasas chaye.
Rajasas tamasas chaye.
Atta eve titan vidhi.
Atta eve titan vidhi.
Natvaham teshu te mayi.
Natvaham teshu te mayi.
Echaiva sattvika bhava.
Ye chaiva sattvika bhava.
Rajasas tamasas chaye.
Rajasas tamasas chaye.
Atta eve titan vidhi.
Atta eve titan vidhi.
Natvaham teshu te mayi.
Natvaham teshu te mayi.
Echaiva sattvika bhava.
Ye chaiva sattvika bhava.
Rajasas tamasas chaye. Mata eve titan vidhi. Atvaham te shute mai.
Sute mai.
Anybody else?
ये चैव सात्विका भावा राजसास्तामसाश्च ये मत्त एवेति तान् विद्धि तत्त्वमहं तेषु ते मयि
Atva. Yea,
Yea,
all those.
although
Ka, and
and
Eva,
favor,
certainly.
certainly,
Satvika,
Satvika,
in goodness.
goodness,
Bhava,
of
states of being.
states of
Rajasa,
Raj,
mode of passion.
the passion,
Tamasa, mode of ignorance.
mode of ignorance,
Cha, also.
also,
Yea,
yea,
although.
so,
Mata, from me.
he,
Eva,
favor,
certainly.
certain,
Iti,
iti,
thus. Khan, those. Did he
Vidhi,
try to know?
try to know. The,
Not.
not
To,
to,
but
but
I,
I,
Keshu,
Keshu,
in those.
window, he,
They,
they,
my,
my,
unto me.
unto me.
Translation. All states of being, be it goodness, passion, or ignorance, are manifested by my energy. I am in one sense everything, but I am independent. I am not under the modes of this material nature. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. All material activities in the world are being conducted under the three modes of material nature. Although these material modes of nature are emanations from the Supreme Lord Krishna, He is not subject to them. For instance, under the state laws, one may be punished, but the king, the lawmaker, is not subject to that law. Similarly, all the modes of material nature, goodness, passion, and ignorance, are emanations from the Supreme Lord Krishna, but Krishna is not subject to material nature. Therefore, He is nirguna, which means these or modes, although issuing from Him, do not affect Him. That is one of the special characteristics of Bhagavan, or the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Okay, now I'll read the Sanskrit of text 13. Vibhir gunamayer bhaver evi sarvamidam jagat mohitam nabijanati mam evya paramavyayam. Vibhi, three, gunamaya, by the three gunas. Bhavai, state of being. Avi, all this. Sarvam, the whole world. Idam, in this world. Jagat, universe. Mohitam, rooted. Na abhijanati, do not know. Mam, Avya, above these. Para, supreme. Avyayam, inexhaustible. Translation. Deluded by the three modes, goodness, passion, and ignorance, the whole world does not know me, who am above the modes and inexhaustible. Report by Srila Prabhupada. The whole world is enchanted by three modes of material nature. Those who are bewildered by these three modes cannot understand that transcendental to this material nature is the Supreme Lord Krishna. In this material world, everyone is under the influence of these three gunas and is thus bewildered. By nature, living entities have particular types of body and particular types of psychic and biological activities accordingly. There are four classes of men functioning in the three material modes of nature. Those who are purely in the mode of goodness are called Brahmins. Those who are purely in the mode of passion are called Kshatriyas. Those who are in the modes of both passion and ignorance are called Vaishyas. Those who are completely in ignorance are called Shudras. And those who are less than that are animals or animal life. However, these designations are not permanent. I may either be a Brahmin, Kshatriya, Vaishya, or whatever. In any case, this life is temporary. But although life is temporary, and we do not know what we are going to be in the next life, still, by the spell of this illusory energy, we consider ourselves in the light of the bodily conception of life, and we thus think that we are American, Indian, Russian, or Brahmin, Hindu, Muslim, etc. And if we become entangled with the modes of material nature, then we forget the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is behind all these modes. So Lord Krishna says that men deluded by these three modes of nature do not understand that behind the material background is the Supreme Godhead. There are many different kinds of living entities, human beings, demigods, animals, etc. And each and every one of them is under the influence of material nature, and all of them have forgotten the transcendent personality of Godhead. Those who are in the modes of passion and ignorance, and even those who are in the mode of goodness, cannot go beyond the impersonal Brahman conception of the absolute truth. They are bewildered before the Supreme Lord in his personal feature, which possesses all beauty, opulence, knowledge, strength, fame, and renunciation. When even those who are in goodness cannot understand, what hope is there for those in passion and ignorance? Krishna consciousness is transcendental to all these three modes of material nature, and those who are truly established in Krishna consciousness are actually liberated. Text 12, all states of being, be they of goodness, passion, or ignorance, are manifested by my energy. I am in one sense everything, but I am independent. I am not under the modes of this material nature. And text 13, chapter 7. Deluded by the three modes, goodness, passion, and ignorance, the whole world does not know me, who am above the modes and inexhaustible. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. It sounds like there's some noise coming through. I think perhaps someone is not on mute. There we go. That's helpful. Hare Krishna, yes. So, so in the several verses just preceding this, so Krishna is talking about like how we can perceive him in the material nature. Rasoham apsukanteya, through the taste of water, prabhasmi sasi suryaya, the light of the sun and the moon, shabdike, the sound in ether, and the fragrance of the earth. He says, Dharma viruda bhuteshu kamosmi bharatarshaba. He is sex life that's not contrary to religious principles. So we get to realize the Supreme Personality of Godhead through the material energy. And then here in this verse, text 12, he says, like, okay, so he's the source everything's manifested by his energy, just like in the first of the seed verses in chapter 10 of Bhagavad Gita. Aham sarvasya prabhavo mata sarvam pravartate iti matva bhajante mam Buddha bhava samambita. Krishna says, I'm the source of all material and spiritual energies. And one, to the extent that one realizes this, then naturally one serves with love, like that. And we also in chapter 10, Krishna gives so many ways, like here in chapter 7, so many ways to realize him through the so-called material energy. And then towards the end, Krishna says, Atava bahunaitena kim getena tavarjuna vistabhyamidam kritsnam ekam sena stido jagat. He says, okay, so, but what need is there for all this specific detailed knowledge? With but a single fragment of myself, I pervade and support this entire universe. So Prabhupada often explains, yes, the detailed knowledge, we want to cultivate knowledge to come to the point to realize who we are as not the body, a spirit, soul, to realize the greatness of Krishna and then engage in service. And also it's true that one who's genuinely engaged in pure loving devotional service, they don't need to separately endeavor to study the detailed knowledge. So Krishna says here in text 12 that all states of being they're manifested by him through his energy. So we can see in these many states of being so much variety and differentiation, right? So much variety and different sorts of senses and fragrance and sound and sight and different types of enjoyment. And so there's so much variety. So, okay, so the Vedanti tat tatvavidas tatvam yajganamadvayam brahmeti paramatmeti bhagavaniti shabdite, the aspect of the absolute called Brahman, Brahmagyoti, is devoid of variety. By definition, it's the undifferentiated oneness aspect of the Supreme. And Bhagavatam, well, Bhagavatam starts with Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. O my Lord, Sri Krishna, son of Vasudeva, all-pervading personality of Godhead, I offer my respectful obeisances unto you. And then Janmadhyase Yatum Vayadi Tiratash Trateshva. So, okay, so then Janmadhyase Yataha. So what exists in the effect must be there in the source. So there's so much variety and differentiation in the effect, as we read here, senses and color and personality. There's so much variety in the effect. So therefore, the undifferentiated Brahman cannot be the ultimate absolute source, the actual substratum of all existence. No, it makes sense that the ultimate source of everything is personality. And so this is the Vedic conclusion. This is the Vedic conclusion. Maya tattamidam sarvam jagyad avyaktamurtina matstani sarvabhutini na chaham teshvavastita. Just like in this verse 12, Krishna says that in a sense he's everything. At the same time, he's separate. He's separate from everything. Him galoka even yakilatma bhuto. He has his personal existence, pastimes in Goloka Vrindavan, separate from the material energies. At the same time, everything's connected with him. So it makes sense, it's logical, it's rational that the foundation of all existence, the fountainhead, the source of everything is personal, containing, possessing variety. And so then these material energies, it's like the shadow. Srila Vyasadeva, after he compiled the Vedas and then on the guidance of his spiritual master Narada Muni, he went into a trance of bhakti yoga na manasi samyat pranihite male apashyam pusham purnam mayam chatara pashrayam. That he went into a trance of bhakti and he saw, yes, the original sort, Govinda Madi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami, the original the encompassing aspect of the absolute. That's Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, not Brahman. And then Maya is like his shadow, just like, well, different analogies are given here in the purport. So just like the shadow is dependent on the substance, Krishna is the substance, right? So the shadow's existence and movement is dependent on the substance. But the substance is not affected by the shadow. The substance is not affected by the shadow. So Krishna is not affected by Maya. So that's like a theme of text 13, the second verse we read. Chibirguna Mayer Bhaver Ebi Sarva Midam Jagat Mohitam Na Bijanati Mamevya Paramavya, deluded by the three modes, goodness, passion, and ignorance. The whole world does not know me, who am above the modes and am inexhaustible. So the shadow is the substance is the source of the shadow, and the substance not affected by the shadow, and the shadow is dependent on the substance. So similarly, Srishti Stiti Pralaya Sadhana Shakti Reka Shayeva Yasya Bhuvanani Bibharti Durga Itana Upamapi Yasya Chachesta Tesa Govinda Madi Pusham Tamaham Bhajami. The shadow energy, Maya, Durga, Kali, different names, serves at the pleasure of Krishna. And so so the example is given. So Krishna says in text 13, the whole world does not know me, who am above the modes and am inexhaustible. Just like, say, the governor might choose to visit the prison house, and someone who's uninformed and ignorant might think, oh, there's the governor, and he's a prisoner just like everyone else. Maybe even the governor, out of compassion, will eat in the prison cafeteria with the prisoners. So again, someone, oh, that's it, the governor is a prisoner. But no, it's completely different. The prisoners are forced to be there by their criminal activities. The government's choosing to be there. He can come and go as he pleases. So similarly with Krishna and Krishna's pure devotees. Krishna describes in the 4th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Janma karma chame divyam evam yogati tattvadeyam punarjanma neti mameti sorjuna. So that to the extent that we understand, not just cognitively, that we have realization of the transcendental to the modes of nature, of Krishna's appearance and disappearance, and the same for Krishna's pure devotees like Srila Prabhupada, then we are liberated. That is the Godhead consciousness. So so this process to understand, that's this process of bhakti. In the next verse, we'll hear text 14 of chapter 7, a verse often quoted by Srila Prabhupada, Devyesha gunamayi mama maya duratyaya mameva ye prapadyante maya metam tarantite. So that on our own endeavor, we're not going to surpass the material energy, but we engage in bhakti, we serve Krishna, and we serve Krishna, and then all the understandings of who we are, who God is, the transcendental knowledge is revealed in our heart, and then we easily surpass the modes of material nature. And so Krishna talks in text 12, chapter 7 here, about the three modes of nature, goodness, passion, and ignorance. And bhakti is actually Shuddha Sattva. It's a whole different energy. It's Shuddha Sattva. It's not just Sattva that doesn't have Rajas and Tamas. It's a whole different energy that reveals spiritual truth. And so bhakti is not dependent on the modes of nature. Bhakti is transcendental. At the same time, we're encouraged to cultivate the mode of goodness, lest we do a spiritual bypass. Sure, bhakti can appear and reveal itself, whatever our situation in the modes of nature. And at the same time, mode of goodness in our consciousness and in our habits. This is, you might say, the best, most conducive platform to be ready to enthusiastically receive Bhakti Lata beads, the seed of Bhakti. It's described in the 14th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. Mam chayo vyabhicharena bhakti yogena sevate sadhunan samatit yaitan brahma bhuyaya kalpate. That it's true that one engaged in bhakti yoga is naturally, automatically transcendental to the modes of nature. One who is engaged unflinchingly without fail. So it could be like a mistake to think, well, I'm engaged in bhakti yoga, therefore I'm transcendental to the modes of material nature, therefore I don't need to work hard to cultivate sattva gun. I'm already transcendental to it. That could lead to the proverbial spiritual bypass, where we're telling ourselves in a non-humble way that I'm transcendental, whereas actually we're ignorant to how I'm actually entangled in the modes. So we can understand that, and for most of us who are not transcendental, an element and a part of our process of bhakti is to consciously, deliberately do the heavy lifting to cultivate the sattvic qualities in our habits and our mentality. And in that way, then now we cultivate the sattvic qualities, not to make them the ultimate goal, but in the context of truly, sincerely wanting to know the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the source of all energies. And so something that really stood out for me in Prabhupada's purport to text 13, that Prabhupada writes, however, these designations are not permanent. So Prabhupada talks about the different varnas and different species. Okay. And so Prabhupada says, these designations are not permanent. So this is the key thing, right? Of course, Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Chaturvanyam maya shrishtam guna karma vibhagasha. That tasyakartaram apimam vidyakartaram avyaya. Very similar to verse 12. Krishna says, yes, I'm the source of the varnas and the ashrams, and I'm transcendental to them. Just as here in text 12 of chapter 7, Krishna says, I'm the source of all these states of being in material nature, but I'm independent. So these different, one's role and position in society, it's based on guna karma, quality and activity, not birth. So, I guess the encouraging meaning is transformation is possible. We're not stuck. The whole Bhagavad Gita, it's a story of Arjuna's transformation. Bhagavad Gita, it's the story of Arjuna's transformation. So whatever our situation in the modes of nature, whatever combination of tamas, rajas, sattva, we can change that. We can move towards sattva. We can go towards, we can cultivate transcendence. It's not a cheap thing. It's not a cheap thing. And Prabhupada would say, work now, samadhi later. It's described in the Bhagavatam. Kirata hunanja pulinda pukasha abira shumba yavana kashadaya yene chapapa yadapashraya raya shujanti tasmai prabhavishnave namaha. So Bhagavatam, Shukadeva Goswami describes all different races, and Prabhupada, like the Russians, the Germans, the Europeans, Africans, Mongolians, that whatever situation one's born into, at least as a spiritual being having a human experience, by serving the pure devotee of Vishnu. Of course, Ete Chamsa Klapumsa, Krishna's to Bhagavan Swayam. Krishna is the source of all incarnations, including the Purusha Vishnu avatars. By serving a pure devotee of Vishnu, then one becomes purified. Then our hearts change. And so, yeah. So for me, this is a very salient key point, that we don't need to be stuck on the machine made of material energy. We have the capacity to use our free will to grab the lifeline. Prabhupada will sometimes say, like kind of like everything's here for us. Like we're drowning in the ocean. Everything's here, the boat of transcendental knowledge, and the parampara, and our pure devotee current link to the disciplic succession spiritual master, chanting Hare Krishna, and the Shastra, Prabhupada's books. And Prabhupada said, so like the lifeline's there, and no one will grab the lifeline for us. No one will grab the lifeline for us. That's our opportunity. That's our responsibility. And to whatever extent we choose to use this human form of life to grab the lifeline, then we change. Then we change, right? There's 5 major topics in Bhagavad Gita, as described in the introduction. Jiva, Ishvara, Prakriti, Kala, and the 5th topic, karma, is temporary. Karma can be destroyed. Yeah, our Prabhupada describes about psychophysical nature. By nature, living entities have particular types of body and particular types of psychic and biological activities accordingly. So that's a psychophysical nature. So that's our karma. We created our karma by what we desired, what we did, what we deserve. We create our, just like we, according to the nature of the criminal activities, the criminal creates his particular prison cell, whether he's in solitary confinement or minimum security. So that's our karma, and karma can be destroyed. Karma can be changed through transcendental process, or simply, as Prabhupada emphasizes in the introduction to Bhagavad Gita as it is, simply by cultivating knowledge. In that part of the introduction, he doesn't even talk about prema or bhava, simply by cultivating sattvic knowledge, by differentiating reality from illusion. Then we rise above our karma, we change, we transcend our karma. Karma can be destroyed forever. And so this is a hugely encouraging aspect of this Bhagavad Gita philosophy, that transformation is possible through, as Krishna describes previously, just in the verses prior to this, through engaging our material senses in spiritual activity. That's bhakti. Sarvopadi vinir muktam tat parat veda nirmalam rishikena rishikesha sevanam bhakti uchite. So sometimes it's asked, well, if our senses are material, like if our mouth and tongue is material, how can we vibrate spiritual vibration? So Well, we can use our material senses spiritually because that's actually precisely what they're designed to do. Right? Sure, we can, let's call it, misuse our mind and senses and intellect and facilities. We can misuse our facilities in a way that keeps us in the prison house. At the same time, in a higher sense, that our tongue is meant to make transcendental vibration. And as soon as we have some spark of sincerity, yeah, I want to get out of this place, let me engage in bhakti, then Krishna, super soul in the heart, infuses our senses with the capacity to be engaged spiritually, and that's what they're meant to do. I just, again, there's sometimes, well, if it's material, how can we understand anything spiritual? We're just like a prisoner can use his body and senses and time in a way to get further implicated in the prison house, or he can use his time in a way that liberates him, and he gets parole that liberates him, right, from the prison house. So our senses are designed to go either way. We can further implicate ourselves in the illusion of matter, thinking we're the body, and then enhance our anxiety, the root cause of all anxiety, misidentification of the spiritual eternal self with the material body, or we can use our senses to liberate ourselves. And if we have some spark, and if we have a fraction of a percent of a desire to get out of this place and engage in bhakti, so Krishna and Srila Prabhupada's desire is like 1 trillion times greater than ours. So they're really happy. They're not going to force us. Krishna speaks the whole Bhagavad Gita. And then right towards the end, he says, he says to Arjuna, now do as you wish to do, fully honoring Arjuna's self-determination. No force, no force. It's not that Krishna is saying, I don't care what you do. Krishna cares. He wants Arjuna to choose wisely for his true highest self-interest. Once there's force though, then there's no love. So fully respecting Arjuna's self-determination. So if we begin to turn towards bhakti, towards super soul, towards Krishna with some sincerity, then Krishna and Srila Prabhupada, then they infuse our heart with the capacity to use our senses for liberation, for personal liberation. Okay, I'll read the verses again, and I'll be glad to hear anyone's realizations, questions, comments. Chapter 7, Bhagavad Gita, text 12. Ye chaiva sattvika bhava rajasas tamasas chaye matta eveti tanvidhi natvaham te shute mai. All states of being, be they of goodness, passion, or ignorance, are manifested by my energy. I am in one sense everything, but I am independent. I am not under the modes of this material nature. And text 13, Shibir Gunamayer Bhaver Ebi Sarvamidam Jagat Mohitam Na Bijanati Mamebhya Paramabhyayam. Deluded by the three modes, goodness, passion, and ignorance, the whole world does not know me, who am above the modes and inexhaustible. Hare Krishna, Jai Srila Prabhupada. Thank you for your presence and attention and association. I welcome if anyone wants to share any comments or ask any questions.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you,
Questions?
Prabhu.
Any questions to ask? Dhira Govinda Prabhu, I have a question. You were mentioning about the importance of knowledge, just by knowledge. The Prabhupada is emphasizing that. At the same time, we also get to see many places this emphasis that one cannot understand Krishna not by karma, not by jnana, and not by yoga. So what is the difference here?
Okay. Yes. Thank you, Jaganivas Prabhu. Well, my reference about knowledge, like I wasn't saying that just by knowledge one can understand Krishna, but by cultivating knowledge, we do rise above our karma. By cultivating knowledge, which is equivalent to sattva, we kind of expand the range of our conscious choice. And in that way, we're not bound on the machine of our karma. Okay, so yeah, so just by cultivating sattvic knowledge, we can transcend our karma. At the same time, then if our consciousness falls to lower modes, then we're again bound on the machine of material energy. So that bhakti is not dependent on cultivating knowledge or any fruitive activity or any mystic yoga. It's described in the Bhagavatam. Vasudevi Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Projita Janayat Yashu Vairagyam Gyanam Chaita Hetukam. Bhakti is the complete, all-encompassing yoga. And by engaging in bhakti, then knowledge is automatically revealed, as is detachment from matter. Okay. At the same time, as I said, like to cultivate sattva qualities, yeah, bhakti is not dependent on that. And part of my process of bhakti is to cultivate sattvic qualities. So, okay, I'm looking around my office and house, and I see a lot of clutter all around. I see a lot of clutter all around, lower mode stuff. So for me to engage in bhakti is not dependent on what my house looks like, whether it's neat, organized, and cluttered or cluttered. It's just not, bhakti is not dependent on that. At the same time, this different clutter and things aren't where they belong, and so then my mind gets cluttered, and that makes it more difficult for me to chant japa joyfully or to read Bhagavatam. So it would be like sattva. Right now, there's a lot of tamas and rajas going on, I can see. So for me to like engage in that sattva, yeah, let me clean, let me make things neat, organized. That in itself, like bhakti is not dependent on that, but that will help me to engage in bhakti. It will help me to engage in bhakti. So bhakti is not knowledge comes automatically from performing bhakti, and by cultivating knowledge, then that can move us to realization that I don't want to just strive for sense gratification. Let me knowledge, just like we referenced chapter 10. Krishna gives so many ways to know him. And but then at the end he says, okay, all those details really isn't important for one who's already in bhakti, but to study all the knowledge brings us to the point, yes, I want to serve Krishna with love and devotion. And serving bhakti, serving Krishna with love and devotion is not dependent on knowledge. We cultivate knowledge, though, to realize this material world, dukkhalayam shashva, it's a temporary place full of misery. Okay, I get it. Bahunam janmanam ante gyanavan mam prabhadite vasudeva sarvamiti samahatma sudulabha. Krishna says that one who's sincere in cultivating knowledge eventually, maybe after many lifetimes, comes to the point of serving me. So part of for most of us at least, like, yeah, let's say for the gopis or the cowherd boys in Goloka Vrindavan, they don't need to be cultivating knowledge or memorizing shlokas or whatever, because they've achieved the goal. They've achieved the goal. I mean, I can imagine that they have all the shlokas within them anyway. So, but for like me, so I'm thinking I'm this body. So to read, to study Prabhupada's books, and then I get more and more realization. Yes, I'm not the body. Sense gratification. This is like a futile waste of time. So that helps me to get more enthusiastic to serve Krishna. So part of our process of bhakti is to cultivate sattvic qualities and to study the Shastras through Srila Prabhupada. And just one point. So in one, to study Prabhupada's books, yes, there is so much philosophical knowledge there that supports us to get enthusiastic, to give up material life and devote to bhakti. And apart from intellectual philosophical knowledge, which Prabhupada's books are so vastly rich in, I mean, apart from that, like even if one is on the pure devotional platform, then one naturally is enthusiastic to read all of Prabhupada's books, because it's not just about like cognitive knowledge. By reading Prabhupada's books, because Prabhupada's books reveal truth, because he's a pure devotee of Krishna. Each line of Prabhupada's books is non-different from the truth it reveals. So whatever we understand philosophically or not, it's we get transformed. We're associating with Krishna, with Arjuna, with Narada Muni, with Shukadeva Goswami. So thanks for your question.
Thank you, Prabhu. Any other questions?
Krishna, Krishna.
Sure, no questions, devotees? Some very significant, these two verses are quite significant verses. Perhaps I will put them on the screen again so that you can take a look and see whether you have any questions.
Krishna, Krishna.
Sorry, this is 11. This one question here, Prabhu. You see the second sentence here. I am in one sense everything, but I am independent. So, in what way is Krishna telling here? I am in one sense everything.
Okay. Yes. So for me, this is real similar to the chapter 9, text 4 Bhagavad Gita, Maya tatamidam sarvam jagadadi. Matstani sarvabhutani nachaham te shravastita. I'll just read the translation to that. So Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Sun rays, right? So in one sense, we could say it's a material example. So the sun is the sun rays. When the sun rises, the sun will rise here in about 20 minutes. It's morning here. So I could say, the sun's coming into my home. And that's true, because the sun rays are non-different from the sun. At the same time, it's not true, because when I say the sun's coming into my home, it's not that the sun globe is in my home. So the sun rays, they are the sun. At the same time, they are different than the sun globe. And we can expand that, because so just like the grass is growing and the vegetables are growing and the flowers are blossoming, and it's all because of the sun rays. It's all because of the sun rays. That life is happening, that there's light. It's all because of the sun rays, and then the animals have food to eat because things grow. And so we can say the vegetation, that's the sun, that's the potency of the sun. At the same time, the sun globe has its separate existence.
Thank you, Prabhu. So when in like in the Brahma Samhita verse, and because this issue happens, like who is the cause of my difficulties for the jiva, and then we say Krishna is Sarva Karana Karanam, cause of all causes. So then could one say this? So ultimately Krishna is the cause of my misery also.
Okay. Yes. Right. Right. Well, of course, Krishna deals with that in Bhagavad Gita. So, no, we are the cause of our misery or happiness. So just like, okay, again, an analogy Prabhupada uses that, okay, so the government is the source of the government's the source of the universities, the government's the source of the prison system. So the government provides all facilities. All right. Now, so the residents of the country, so one resident might choose to live their life in a way where they're taking advantage of the university system, and they apply, they become a scholar, and then they become a professor, like that. And then another citizen, the other citizen might choose to commit a crime, maybe murder, or become a thief. Okay, so sure. So the government is the source of the prison house, but then the citizen who decided to act in a criminal way is responsible for suffering in the prison house. That's the use or misuse of the free will. So similarly, yeah, so we've made choices, conditioned entities, we've made choices to be in the prison house of existence. And that's our responsibility. And we can, transformation is possible. We can choose to be a law-abiding citizen, and in that way, then we're free to have a happy life in Krishna's kingdom.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Sorry, my camera is not working today. I would like to just ask. So this verse 7.13, towards the end of the purport, Srila Prabhupada says, so, and if we become entangled with the modes of material nature, then we forget the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is behind all these modes. So Lord Krishna says that living entities deluded by these three modes of nature do not understand that behind the material background is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So my question is that if we come out of this delusion ever of these three modes of material nature, will we be able to see the Supreme Lord, or we will be still in the behind the Brahma Jyoti, in the sense we would not have really reached to see the Supreme Lord like face to face?
Okay. Right. Yes. Well, Prabhupada gives very encouraging statements about that. And Prabhupada says, yeah, no, you can see Krishna face to face, talk with him, dance with him, and eat with him. So the process the process of liberation that we're endeavoring to follow in the line of Srila Prabhupada and the Vaishnav, Brahma Madhva Gaudiya Vaishnav Sampradaya, this is bringing us to personal bhakti liberation, which includes Brahma Jyoti realization. The devotee Muktir Swam Mukulitan Juli Sevate Sman described that the devotee doesn't care for the Brahmagyoti realization, that it's not even interesting or even attractive, but that impersonal liberation is waiting at the doorsteps of the devotee. So the path that we're following or trying to follow in the line of Prabhupada gives us liberation where we do realize Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Of course, a devotee at a very pure stage isn't even in a sense, a devotee is simply interested. Chakudan Diloye Janme Janme Prabhu say, let me just serve Prabhupada birth after birth. And then ironically, then Krishna is so pleased with such a devoted mentality that then Prabhupada's so pleased, and Prabhupada introduces us to Krishna. So we're following, we're not following like a Shankaracharya path. The path we're following gives personal liberation, where we realize Krishna, the personality of Godhead, and that includes Brahmagyoti realization. But Prabhupada has, in Bhagavad Gita, in his purports, he says, really, there's no conflict between personalist and impersonalist, because they're different realizations of the absolute. In another place in his purports of Bhagavad Gita, Prabhupada says, there's the personalist, there's the impersonalist, and there's the devotee. My understanding of that is a devotee is not in a camp. This aspect of the absolute, that aspect. Devotee appreciates all realizations, aspects of the absolute. And so I don't know if I responded to your question, but those are some thoughts that came to mind.
Thank you, Prabhu. Because I was wondering about this. Daivi eshe gunamai mama maya duretyaya maya vaye prapadyante maya metam mame vaye prapadyante maya metam tarantite. So in this verse, Krishna is saying, if you surrender unto me, then you can overcome the three modes of material nature. You can overcome Maya. So, but will we, after overcoming Maya, have to deal with the Brahmajyoti, or that's included? Since you said it's included, so I take that as the answer.
Yeah. So that's my understanding, that the devotee overcomes Maya, and the devotee does have Brahmagyoti realization, but they just don't care about it much. It's just like not that interesting for them, because simultaneously they have Bhagavan realization, and that's what's really exciting for them. So
yeah.
If we read the stories of so many devotees, or Kumars or Cardamom, that it's clear they do have realization of the Brahmagyoti, but because they have a devotional heart, it just becomes not particularly exciting for them.
Yeah, because my question came from because of the Ishopanishad. Sri Ishopanishad, it says the devotee is telling Krishna, please uncover your effulgence so that I can see you. So what stage will that be? So I was thinking, whether will it be after you come out of the material modes, and then you have to deal with the effulgence of the Lord. Then you pray to the Lord to please remove the effulgence so that we can see him. So that was it.
Thanks very much for referencing that. It's the 15th verse of Ishopanishad. Hiranmayena patrena satyasya pitamukam tatvam pushana pavino satya dharmaya drishtaye. Yeah. And my understanding is like, this is very personal. Like it's not all one path. Like it's Krishna, the spiritual master reciprocating. So there's, so that one thing, I guess my sense, and this is subjective, I don't have like quantitative statistics here, but Ishopanishad is the book of Prabhupada where he maybe least frequently directly mentions Krishna. Like he seems to be right from the introduction, the lectures at Conway Hall in England, that Prabhupada seems to really be speaking to maybe an intellectual class of people who've already developed an interest in the Vedas and they're inclined towards the impersonal emphasis, and then like gradually meeting them where they're at, bringing them to Krishna. So yeah, so the Upanishads and the Ishopanishad, they're, yeah, I would say like that, they represent a particular class of spirit, soul, who has realization of the futility of material nature, and a particular class, maybe like the four Kumaras or the Jayantayas, or like that, where yeah, they really free themselves from material desire, and then they have Brahma-Gyoti realization, and they're not envious. Like there's the verse that Avishuddha Buddhayo, that Yene Ravindaksha Vimukti Madinas Tvayasta Bhavana Avishuddha, that there, because many who have the Brahma-Gyoti realization, to some extent, there's envy in their hearts, so they don't come to pure devotional service. Usually they go back to material desire. But yeah, Brahma-Gyoti realization, and then it's like, oh, okay, all right, yeah, and I want something more complete than this, because I have spiritual senses that I want to engage, but the glaring effulgence is covering the beautiful face of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So I'm not sure that like every devotional soul goes through that sort of process, experience, and stage described in Ishopanishad. Maybe, I'm not sure if it represents every devotional soul, but it's definitely like a path for some, where then they become sort of like even frustrated with the glaring Brahma-Gyoti.
Okay. Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Prabhu, there's a question on the chat.
Yeah. Okay. So chat says, Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. I have a question, please. If the mind is material, for which we exercise conscious effort or will, if you like, is the exercise of free will a function of the conscious mind, or is it on the level of the soul? And how can we distinguish the will of the soul and that of the mind? Okay, thank you. That's from Aristotle Moti Nandi. Thank you. Okay, so if the mind is material, yes, in conditioned state, and of course we can use the mind spiritually, and like our mind and senses become gold-plated to the extent that we engage them in bhakti. Okay, free will, a function of the conscious mind. All right. So it is interesting, because sometimes Prabhupada uses the term like the mind's ego, as if like the mind is a person that has an ego. So sometimes Prabhupada uses that term. At the same time, it's like in one sense, the mind is a form of dead matter, right? Just like the table or the window shade. So from that point of view, the mind isn't conscious any more than my hand is conscious. At the same time, the mind really feels like, no, there's this like conscious mind who has a life and will of its own inside my head. And, like that, it can feel that way. But my understanding of the Bhakti Sankhya philosophy is that the mind, it's a form of matter, which means it's not conscious. And so free will is on the level of the soul, and we kind of like express our free will through the subtle material body, ego, intellect, and mind. And so from that, it certainly feels like my mind has a will of its own. At the same time, mind is matter, so it's not conscious. Again, just like the chair does not have a desire to be sit upon or a desire to be moved into a different room. So it comes from the soul. Prabhupada gives the example, just like, so the soul, like, just like the light is always white, but if we see light through blue paper, red paper, then it appears blue. So according to our association with the modes, then the soul's desire becomes material in different ways. So just like my understanding is, just like we have a desire, and so through some arrangement with demigods and modes of nature and prakriti, then we fulfill that desire. I have a desire to pick up a pen, and we do it through the hand. So similarly, I have a desire to enjoy some thinking, so I do that through the mind. Just like I have a desire to walk, so the soul manifests that desire in co-creation with demigods, modes of nature, through the legs. So we have a desire to think, to will, and so the soul manifests that desire through the subtle material body, like the mind. That's some understanding.
Thank you, Prabhu. Any other questions?
Hare Krishna.
Maybe we will take one last question.
Yeah, thinking, feeling, and willing are functions of the mind. Yes, that is correct. Prabhupada states that. Just like picking things up as a function of the hand. And they're expressions of the soul. And in material life, they're, let's call it, distorted expressions, just like the pure white light being filtered through blue paper. Yeah, it's all expressions of the soul. Imposed on us by, well, of course, yes, we're victimized by the material energy. Yes, but it's not like, poor me, I'm a victim of material energy. Just like we can use, let's say, the criminal. So a citizen of the state chooses to act in a criminal way, or murder, goes to prison. So then, yeah, so then once the person's in prison, we say, then now they're just victimized. Now they have to eat this food, and now they have to go to this prison cell, and now they have to be, now they're pushed around by the guard. They're victimized by the prison system. Well, it's true, they are victimized by the prison system, and they are the source. They are responsible. They created the whole context in which they're victimized. So just like, okay, so a spirit soul performs different activities, cultivates a consciousness, gets in the body of a dog, and then, yeah, then it's imposed. Now you're going to bark. You're going to bark. The material energy is imposing upon you. You're going to bark, and that's it. And now, so then the special gift, but you can't say, oh, poor thing, it has to bark. No, that spirit soul is responsible for being in the prison cage called dog species. Now, the special opportunity in the human form of life is we don't have to bark. Meaning, sure, yeah, we've got a particular karma, and if we're not cultivating knowledge, consciousness, sattva, transcendence, if we're not cultivating consciousness, then we're going to be like a dog that has to bark, and we'll just go along according to the mode, according to the prison cell we're in, the machine made of material energy that we got ourselves stuck on. The special opportunity in the human form of life is we can choose, I will no longer be victimized by the material energy. We can make that choice. And the process, the enduring process for that, the most recommended process for that, I'm choosing to engage in bhakti, and now I'm stepping out of my karma. I don't have to bark. Right. So yeah, I've got so many unwanted thoughts, and that's like the barking. I've got so many unwanted thoughts, and they're imposed on me. And again, they're imposed on me, and I'm responsible for getting myself in this particular machine, which is now like 60 years old. It was called David Wolf from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I'm responsible for that. And I get to make a choice to cultivate higher consciousness, transcendental consciousness. And in doing that, then I'm no longer a slave to the machine of material energy. That's a special opportunity in the human form of life. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu. Anything else from anyone else? I think if you do a index search of all the things Srila Prabhupada has said in the mind, that will be useful to see how exactly all the various permutations of how he presents the mind and the way it functions and all that. And also possibly similar search on the soul as well. That could help also.
Definitely, yeah, that would be a fascinating, enriching philosophical search for sure.
Okay, thank you, devotees, for your presence today. Thank you, Dhira Govinda Prabhu, for joining us today. Appreciate your presence and your presentation. So if there are no other questions, I think we will close here. Next week, we have another presenter continuing with the next verses coverage. I will provide the details later on. But next week will be at 5 o'clock, devotees, not at 6 p.m. Will be at 5 p.m. Singapore, Malaysia time. Thank you very much, Dhira Govinda Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
You all, thanks for your association. Hare Krishna. Jai Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki
Jai. Thank you,
Hare Krishna.
Prabhu.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Devotees, please stay. So next week, like I said, we will continue with the next two verses, and I will send the details to all of you sometime during the middle of the week. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Thank you, Prabhu. Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Krishna, Prabhu.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.